Welcome to Isn't It Obvious, where things are obvious. That's going to be the intro.
Well, amount of game equals types of government references, so now it's on YouTube.
I feel like Stardew Valley is just not really representing farm life.
I think it's an underappreciated game, and we should all play it together as a co-op. It's super fun.
No, but I mean, the idea that you're trapped in this cubicle land, and then suddenly you get this inheritance, and you have a farm, and you can start really working this thing out, and you just have a wonderful life afterwards. Like, this is not reasonable or realistic. It's just a pure fantasy.
Phil, games are meant to be escapism.
I was going to say that's what a game is, Phil.
Hello, and welcome to Isn't It Obvious, your some time frame of entertainment, hopefully, at some point in time. I am your host, Micah, for this episode, here with Phil and Sera.
Welcome back, everyone.
Hi.
This could be episode 1. Don't mislead our listeners.
Welcome back, everyone.
Isn't it obvious
We're already friends.
that vice crimes should only be used in civil cases and should not have criminality applied to them?
Can you define vice crimes?
Yeah.
Drug possession, prostitution, I think cheating, although that might have already been bumped down.
I don't think cheating. Cheating's not a. Oh, you mean like
Gambling?
In a marriage.
That's not a crime?
Some states
It's not a
consider
crime.
That. No, some
I thought
states.
some states
yeah.
had some things
Right.
where, like,
Really?
if you cheat,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not in our
What's
state,
wrong with these states?
but some states.
No, because our state's rational for being in the middle of the country.
I mean, cheating's wrong. I mean, unless it's mutually agreed upon willingly, but
Then it's not cheating.
then
Yeah.
it's not cheating. It's just
But, like, drug use should not have criminality applied to it. Prostitution should not have criminality applied to it, whether you're purchasing or selling.
What about gambling, like illegal gambling? People going and betting on things that are not part of the...
well, the gambling itself might not be a problem, but the dog fights or the
Well, that's animal abuse.
yeah, exactly.
That's not a vice crime.
That would be not a vice crime. That's
Yeah.
horrible, and that absolutely should be prosecuted.
I laugh because it's terrible.
Well, can't Google now. We started
The,
recording.
yeah, too late now. But the
Yeah.
gambling itself probably wouldn't be a
I
crime.
don't think so. But I don't think that you can have it where some goon goes to break a dude's leg because he owes you a bunch of money. That's illegal.
Yep.
What about...
That's racketeering. But if you're having a poker game between friends, everybody throws in $100 and it stays there, I don't see how that should be illegal.
Agreed.
What about loans that are ridiculous? Loan shark loans.
Again, anyone can make that, but you can't send a goon out to enforce it.
You have to go through the proper channels.
Yeah.
Have their
Do we have to go back to the
wages-
TARP loans, the things that blew up the economy in
Gotta have their
2008?
wages
Because
garnished.
that was legal. And that was in the institution that loaned money.
All right, I'm going to focus fire on one, which is going to be drugs, because that's the more fun one of them all.
And that's what I wanted.
Oh.
You fell into my trap.
Oh, God. Okay, so for drugs, what if it's bad drugs? Like, so you're saying selling and buying, or just buying?
No, selling would be illegal. And buying... Well, no, because I also think that drugs should be decriminalized. Those that can be naturally harvested, not artificial.
Okay, vice crimes should be in the civil courts. They shouldn't be charged criminally. It's just money on the table. No, I'm going to put you in jail and prison. Is that the idea?
So if you, Phil, went out and bought an 8-ball of cocaine and you were arrested, would crime in a penitentiary with people who've committed assault, people who've committed murder, people who are involved in illegal activity benefit you as someone who just wanted to snort a little cocaine? Or would that money that would go towards your incarceration for that only personal use stipulation of drugs be better off sending you to rehab or some type of therapy where you can get to why you wanted to use that nose candy to begin with?
Let's say in my case that I'm going to go get some narcotics, and I'm going to go to my local narcotics store that's not really a store, not taxed either, and
It's
be
a
like, I would like...
It's a creepy parking lot near a park.
Why is... Do you think that drug dealers don't have homes?
I'm pretty sure that they don't do business out of their homes. Unless
Yeah,
it's...
why do you think they're really cheap apartment buildings around a lot of high density, high traffic
that
areas?
might be the case, but
That's called the office.
it would have to be an apartment, because if there's like a lot of weird strangers coming in and out, like I feel like that's a big old like, hey, yeah, there's something's going on here. I think people would notice that.
It's
Just saying.
drugs. hardcore drugs.
Yeah.
Oh, it's always drugs.
It's always drugs. Okay, so my problem with this is that if I went ahead and got caught and the officer said, "Oh, you did a bad
As
one."
you've made abundantly clear, you would just tell all of the crimes you committed to any police officer at any point in time.
I have 1 unit of narcotics, and here's my receipt, and here's what my plan was, and here's my business plan, and
Your dealer's using Squarespace?
and here's my credit card information, and here's a video of me purchasing it, and everything. And then they're going to be like, okay, off to federal or even any type of prison you go.
Depending on the quantity you purchased,
right?
yeah.
And the idea here is that me getting this 1 unit of narcotics, I understood what the risk is. Whether it's right or wrong, the risk is I'm going to go to prison. It's a serious consequence. And therefore, this is why I have to understand that side of the scale. And so is the benefit outweigh the burden? And I'm going to say yes. And then off I go and I do this. And then I get caught. Would you say that in this case, for me, consequences, you just have to accept them. You kind of made your decision. There's no way you can weasel out of this one. You have to have some sort of ownership of your actions, right or wrong. But isn't that just understood?
But it's does the punishment outweigh the crime committed? Does you, apart from you buying this 1 unit of narcotics, are you a detriment to society?
Possibly.
Are there other implications or other illegalities in your life beyond just this one purchase of narcotic?
The problem here is that logistically speaking, I don't understand the industry supplying this 1 unit of narcotic. I don't understand how they got it, what had to happen to get it here. Is it a clean process? Did people get hurt? Who's making money out of this? Are the right people benefiting? How many people are hurt from this whole thing?
With that and the level of crimes committed through that whole supply chain, is you, as the end product, deserving of the punishment that should be applied to other people higher up in the chain?
I mean,
You're the lowest hanging fruit. Does that deserve federal prison time?
Not for necessarily purchasing or using, but I think the only thing that should be criminal is if you are irresponsible in your use and you end up hurting someone. And that's
what DUI is.
Well, exactly. That's what a DUI...
Driving under the influence.
Yep. Or driving while intoxicated. Or...
I thought intoxicated only dealt with alcohol, and DUI was under non-alcohol things.
Yep.
Yeah, there's 2 big problems here. One is that the scale doesn't make sense. So low-hanging fruit are always going to get the worst of the consequences because it's easy, open and shut case.
Not true.
Oh, well, all right. I mean,
Are you going to pull a RICO out of someone selling nickels and dimes on the corner?
For example, like Napster and people basically stealing music. How do you enforce? Is the end user the one who gets in trouble for stealing the music, or is it Napster's fault for providing the file?
Or is it the person who uploaded it for it to be consumed without pay?
Yeah, and like, I don't know how that all went down or whatever, because I didn't care. But
what I find interesting, because with that Napster case, they prosecuted users that downloaded things.
Yeah, which...
They didn't upload things. It didn't go after Napster, not after their host servers. It's the inverse of the Nuremberg trials, where the Nuremberg trials only had the upper echelon of the Nazi party, and they did not deal with the grunts that made up the army.
And then they realized that wasn't doing much. The same thing is happening now, and no one gets prosecuted for people pirate movies and stuff. And like the worst they get is
you get a warning from your ISP because they don't want to traffic in
but
pirated
only
material.
If you are downloading a ridiculous amount.
Because I remember when Game of Thrones was popular, Comcast had to send out a whole bunch of emails being like, "We saw you pirating file name for Game of Thrones episode.
You have to delete it before we turn your internet back on or whatever or something."
It was always the first one, so internet wasn't shut off, but I think that was their threat, is if you do this again, we'll shut off your internet for time period.
No, I don't know. I never went through that.
I pirated smartly.
Well, that's the thing, is that I feel like for pirating, in the beginning of the pirate days where pirates were not well educated, they did go for the low-hanging fruit because they had the ISP. And at that time, the courts didn't understand what that meant, so they're able to charge people and fine people to say, like, you committed a crime. Later on, it's like, well, ISP is not a really strong evidence that the person was doing it, especially in campuses and universities. And then eventually people got smart about how they did it. And then now it's not a low-hanging fruit anymore when people can mask themselves or do this type of nefarious behavior much more stealthily. So it became less of a low-hanging fruit. I would argue like the better example, these type of shenanigans would be taxes, where they know how much I owe. So why don't I just tell them, like, okay, just tell me how much I owe and I'll give you that much. But nope, they make me run through this stupid program and process, and then only for them to be like, you owe more. It's like, well, fuck you. You should have just told me that. If you already know how much the delta is,
just send me the fucking
just send me
bill.
the fucking bill. I don't want to spend hours on this bullshit. And so what happens is that the people like me that are the peasants of the world, or in this country, like we just, yep, okay, well, you owe this much. And if you don't, we'll make fucking sure we're going to get that money from you. But if you're very rich, they're not going to go for you because you're no longer low-hanging fruit. Yeah. Because you can just hire a lawyer and it's just not worth their time. I feel like that's the same type of logic for drug offenders. It's like, well, going after logistics is just too difficult and kind of like a really bad way to use our resources. A smarter way is just to use
civil forfeiture.
Right, and then just be like, okay, well, that's pretty easy to do. Like, they can't defend the money can't defend itself. Off we go and steal legally. And on top of that, it's like, okay, well, if you're a minority in this country, I'm going to pull the race card here, and you get caught with like whatever units of narcotics, you're most likely going to have a bad time with the legal system because
the whole justice system stacked against you.
It's kind of hard for like a newbie to navigate.
It's still bullshit though. It's not even just about being a newbie. Like there's so many back dealing and pre-trial bullshit that goes on because it's not justice. Like, sorry, but it's not.
I don't disagree, but like if I got caught with one unit, like the first thing I would do is talk to a lawyer. I'm just going to throw money at the problem. And that's enough for them to be like, this guy's a pain in the ass. He's no longer low-hanging fruit.
That's true.
And so the problem is that if you're not well connected or you don't have a lot of resources, it really isn't a race thing. It's just a poverty thing.
Which is
unfortunately linked to
race
for whatever reason.
Definitely correlated to race.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, like redlining and, just structural damage. So, yeah, I feel like low-hanging fruit for sure. Like the system, it's the best bang for your buck if you're a municipal office for law.
But is it the best bang for your buck to take this user, again, take you, Phil, as an example, with your 1 unit of narcotics? Is it the best bang for your buck to send you to prison? Are you then a contributing member to society? Is your punishment meant to be a deterrent for other people?
They don't care about making it a deterrent. They're just in it to look like they're doing something so they can get paid at the end of the day. It's job security. If they really wanted to get these people off the streets, they'd go after the supply. That's just smart.
The other thing, too, is that almost everyone benefits from a working prison system. So, like, the mayor gets to look tough on crime. That works well for their
in for-profit
prisons. The officers and detectives look like they're doing a good job. The for-profit prisons, I think they get like paid $1 an hour. So also in the Constitution, it's forced labor is okay if you're a prisoner. Many of the tags that we have for our t-shirts are ironically saying if they're made in USA is done by prisoners. In reality,
no, that's USA. It's a small Asian country by Malaysia.
In reality, like everyone should be really upset about the way that our pipeline to prison works, but individually, people are okay with it. Like for me, since I don't do narcotics at all, and I have competition that are smart engineers, and they do narcotics, and they get caught, and then they have a felony record. Now I look better compared to them.
I see how it is.
No, I mean, it's just what it is. So like, I go in there, I'm squeaky clean, I can pee in a cup, no problem. And my competition who are clever, more smart, or what have you.
Clever and intelligent.
But then they go ahead and they do 1 unit narcotic and they have it on their record. Well, that's just Mario Kart rules. Like you tripped on a banana. So I'm not going to start saying no more bananas. I know how to go around them.
Sure, but does 1 banana slippage mean that you should go to prison?
As a user perspective, you can't control the laws. So you only can control how you act to the rules. Fair enough, right? So I think that someone should do the benefit burden analysis. And that's not fair to them, but that's just the way the rules are set up. But from, like, if you're a ruler or a civic person and you can look at the way the rules are and you could change them.
What about this pertaining to an engineer? So you have you in your position, no units of narcotics ever, but there's a person at the same position who has a unit of narcotics. Drug test goes around. Is it better for him to be prosecuted as a criminal or for him to be sued by his company for that illicit substance in the system?
Okay, fair enough.
Because that would make it a civil suit, not a criminal suit.
Yeah.
So does the company have grounds to be like, we can sue you for X amount of money if you test positive for this drug?
All they would do is fire him.
And even then, I bet the company would not want to fire them.
Right. So isn't that a better system where they take a penalty within their institution, but they keep their job?
Yeah, I agree.
What's the penalty then?
Pay cut, loss of bonus, something.
Disciplinary, whatever.
Strike one. Something within the company, but it doesn't deal with the justice system.
I think in most cases that would be how it's handled unless the authorities are involved.
This is kind of a strange territory. I would imagine that if the company found out that I had 1 unit of narcotics, they would not fire me. They wouldn't fire anyone in that case because it's really expensive to rehire. They're just looking at the bottom line and retrain. So I'm not saying that I'm exceptional. I'm just saying it's just a pain in the ass. So what they would do is, I would agree with you, Micah, that actually the corporations and companies would be the ones that are most looking forward to having a workforce that's not roped into shenanigans. So they would be like, look, I think the FBI even has, you're supposed to be truthful in your submission as a potential worker. And then they said, well, just tell us you did marijuana. We don't fucking care because we're just losing too many applicants. I feel like the workforce here is the right angle because, yeah, it's not good for the company. It's not good for the industry if they're just getting their workers sniped by these BS 1 unit narcotic problems. Now, if the person is like clearly an alcoholic and is not performing, that's a different story. But in this case,
showing up to work with alcohol in their breath, forgetting.
I've only done that twice.
What?
Agree with you, Micah. In that case, it's not really good it's a waste of resources and it's terrible inefficiencies where someone could go to prison for it. They lose their job. The company loses profit, presumably. So, yeah, I think it's bullshit. Aside from the company and the worker, which I don't know what that relationship is for law. Like, Sera, when you mentioned, they would most likely handle it hush-hush.
Or they'll just pre-trial it. They won't even take it to the judge until they've already decided between the defendants and the prosecution what they want to do.
Yeah, plead down to a personal use misdemeanor over your felony possession or
Plead
something
down
like that.
and try and make the case just go away. Everyone's happy, everyone makes money, and there's no, like, wasting everyone's time.
I do have to say that, like, at certain companies, when you hit a certain level, they'll give you legal representation. It would happen in my old job where they would say something like, taxis are free. Just give us a receipt, no questions asked. And then my old job was also like, for $10 a month, you have a lawyer on retainer. And so, like, the idea is that if you get caught up in the legal system shenanigans, use us so we can bail you out. Now, if you perform poorly for whatever reason, then, you know, we'll fucking kick you to the curb. But we're trying to protect
if you bring your shit to work.
Yeah, well, then you're out.
Then you're out. But
if you're getting messed with by somebody, then, you know, like, you're part of the game. Like, as long as you're useful, we'll protect you. But
that seems legit, honestly.
But I don't know. It seems nice, right? But, like, it's just a bottom line protector.
True. Nice to know that your company is, well, we don't want to go through the bullshit of rehiring someone, so use our resources.
We use our pooled resources that are cheap because it's like, you know, the risk is low and you add everybody in there.
Yep.
And, you know, everyone chips in a couple $.
Just
out of their
don't be a
paycheck,
problem
basically.
all the time, and we'll, like, no, it's our lawyer, not yours.
So I feel like in general, like, the system is auto-balancing in this way, right? Like, companies are looking for a way to protect their workers somehow. I mean, not every company.
Is every company doing that?
Not every company, but the companies that
have the resources
have the resources are trying to auto-balance this.
But should companies be doing that?
No. Ideal state and practice state are different. Unfortunate world. Like, companies should not give people free taxis because their employees are drinking too much, or companies should not be giving them legal protection because of shenanigans from the local law enforcement. But they're doing this because it's cheaper for them to pitch in a couple $. Now ahead of time to mitigate risk of the future. It's kind of crazy. Why would a company do this? Is to protect themselves ultimately. Why would this, but they can only protect themselves as a small unit. Why do they have to? Well, because society got to a point where it's full of shenanigans and loopholes. Should we change that? Well, yeah, but who's in the right mind going to ever actually campaign for decriminalization and the logic of having a smart prison system?
Micah raises his hand.
I do have my hand raised. Because that seems like a very simple thing that should be a cornerstone of
but
society.
Then what will our officers do? They'll have to do real work about real cases and earn their money.
They have plenty of practice creating speed traps, all right? That's enough of a income flow that they can capitalize on.
That's a stupid crime.
Yeah, it is. Until you see a truck with a U-Haul drive past you in the middle of a blizzard in Wisconsin going 95.
That's putting people in danger. There's a difference between going 5 over in regular weather and just keeping up with traffic, and then there's, like, the asshole who's actually gonna kill somebody because he's dodging, weaving, and being irresponsible. There's a difference. The speeding itself isn't really...
At what point on that hill are you gonna make a fence?
I don't know.
And will that fence be any good?
if we get rid of all the drug crimes and the prostitution crimes, what are officers going to do? Besides, catch speeders. Because not all of them are
maybe
traffic cops.
Work with their neighborhoods, get to know the people they're meant to be policing, and you have a better interaction with authority.
I know Micah's had his car stolen. Have you ever had anything stolen from you?
I had my car broken into a few times, which is always a pain in the ass.
Did you report that to the authorities? And
it was kind of like I'm calling the cops because someone stole my weed situation, but yeah. And because
wait, did somebody steal your weed?
No, but like I parked in an area that you're not supposed to park overnight, and so then I called the cops and be like, "Yeah, someone did this," and they're like,
"Were you
when?" And it's like, "Well, I parked here overnight." And they're like,
"Are you admitting a crime?
You're not supposed to park here." And then they kind of
no.
set me aside. And they're like, "Listen, you're not supposed to park here overnight. I'm giving you a warning." I'm like, okay. But I parked here overnight, officer, and the night before, and they're like, just stop.
Like an idiot.
Just file the report and just shut up. It's like, okay.
So I was involved in a hit and run. I couldn't get the last 3 digits of the license plate because my eyes are terrible, and there was just not enough time for me to get all of the digits. So I call 911 just because I'm fucking...
in the best state to be talking
Well,
to
I was not in a great state because this creepy guy was riding my ass and being creepy, and I'm like, are you gonna follow me home? Because that's like not cool. So I was like, guess I'm gonna drive up to the local police station that's just up the road, but I didn't end up having to do that because the idiot hit the back of my car, and I think he must have panicked at that point because he actually made contact and he just sped off, and I never got his full plate number. But I called just in case, but they aren't gonna do anything. They can't. They literally can't do anything. They can't track this guy down.
So a red or black SUV made between 2005 and 2020 hit you. Okay, we will get our police on it.
It would be nice if the police actually had resources to be able to kind of like deal with this crap.
Like a camera on...
Wait, we can't have CCTV. That's a police state.
See, I would be okay with it as long as it was
in public areas?
In public areas and by request. If there was a crime that happened in that area at that specific time, you could request it from whoever's keeping the data by a
Freedom
warrant.
of Information Act.
Yeah, whatever. You can request it as someone who has an interest in it, and they can send it to you.
What limits the interest?
Huh?
Can you just say I'm interested in what happened at Avenue A and
like a warrant,
18th Street?
Like a warrant, you'd have to have probable cause.
So you have to go through the court system in order to look at that video.
It's just enough of a nuisance for people who are like, I'm kind of curious about clogging the system to not, but not enough of a nuisance for people who are like, look, I feel
you have to have
threatened.
a very defined time frame, a specific location, and a judge would have to be like, okay, tell me what happened, give me the time frame.
Why would you have to deal with a judge in that situation? Aren't our judges overtaxed? Why would you need to deal with a judge for that? Why would it not be a lower member?
Like a legal clerk or
you
something?
You could, talk to someone whose job that is to deal with those requests specifically and have a task force or whatever for the CCTV.
So not only will installing these cameras and setting up the electronic infrastructure create jobs, you're saying that there also will be another job as someone
yeah, sounds good, right?
I think we have a platform building here.
Not just anyone can request this information. It has to be specific, like a detailed, specific time frame.
Should only specific people go for FOIA requests then?
That's different. This isn't
only
isn't Freedom of Information Act.
But something.
Why would it not be a Freedom of Information if it's something that's recorded that the public pays for? Because the public are paying for those cameras to be serviced
and it is a
conditioned
public
and
place.
function.
I guess, I don't know, I still think you would have to keep it specific. Tell, like, this is what I'm specifically looking for. This is what happened. I want the proof so I can use it in a court case.
But why does that have to be specifically in a court case? Why are you snuffing out journalists now?
Well, maybe they're gathering money for political...
So something that happened in a public space that was recorded by a publicly serviced system should not be available to everyone?
Sure.
No, it should not be available to everyone.
No, I would agree. I think it shouldn't be because, like, then you're just getting... That becomes, like, what about stalkers?
Yeah.
Creepy people who are, like, trying to keep Like, no, I don't think... No, this isn't a surveillance state, Micah. This is just a specific time frame for a specific
If it was a surveillance
reason.
state, all of that information would be limited, and the access to it would be even more limited. That'd be a surveillance state.
Well,
No,
the
because
problem...
I'm not
Micah,
saying it should be free open, but
haven't we had
anyone
this
should be able to
discussion
make a
about
request on
CCTV?
We have.
We
And my answer to this, by the way, is that they should just sell really thick license plates. And in the center of the license plate is just a camera that just receives an image. And it's thick because it's just filled with fucking batteries. And
It's filled with rage and batteries.
And every once in a while, you just have to get a new license plate because who's ever going to charge these things? You just throw them in the ocean. That's where they belong. Anyway.
What happens in a rear-end accident where all of that battery acid spills
That's
out?
where Crashberry Pi comes into place, where you can still get the image, and who cares about the environment and the acid coming out of that battery? Like, that's someone else's problem, probably
Oh my
the
God.
States. But you still get that image you need so that you can
What is this? The
record
responsible
assholes.
70s?
All right. But based on that absolutely horrible way of dealing with traffic infractions, thanks, Phil.
You're welcome. Anytime,
I
Micah.
will sum up this episode as a big old maybe.
Big old maybe.
But drugs should be decriminalized. That can be harvested from a natural source because it seems illegal. Anyway, final point. Bye.
Bye, Mom.
Yeah, thanks, Mom.